Congratulations for making it to level 20. So, fair warning, these exercises are pretty challenging now because we're starting to apply all the things that we have learned in the levels past and making them even harder with more rhythms, faster shifts, faster interval changes, right? And changing almost everything into kind of a triplet feel, okay? So starting with level 1 and 2, actually. So we're working on our double vertical stroke again here, but now we're speeding it up into the sextuplet rhythm. So it's actually gonna sound more like a roll, right? So as we go through these lines here, try to think a little bit lighter with your touch. We're not gonna pound all the double verticals with our wrists as strongly as we did in the previous levels. We're just gonna play a little bit lighter so that the sound blends a little bit more, right? So as you go through line number 1, we have these eighth note triplets to start, right? Immediately, once you get to beats 3 and 4, it's gonna sound like a roll and a sustain, right? So don't think like this where we're kind of trying to articulate every single stroke. Like we don't need that. We're just gonna kind of relax a little bit, still using your wrist, right? But not nearly hitting the keyboard quite as hard, because you're gonna find that as you play rolls in music and even in the next line, you're gonna run out of energy and stamina really quickly if we're trying to play every single double vertical stroke as a unique, distinct motion, as opposed to allowing it to kind of blend together, okay? So listen to line 1 here with a more relaxed motion. So there's line 1, okay, keeping that lighter touch in all of our double vertical strokes. And also, watch out for this shift into the E, B flat chord here. All right, don't forget, we're gonna push off and we're gonna shift our weight just so we can get our torso facing the correct direction, right? Finding that edge beating spot, okay, before we go back into our F and C. As you get into line 2, this line, we're rolling, and this is kind of like a chorale, right? We have these chords moving in half notes, and we are gonna fill them in with sextuplets, right? But essentially, we're just trying to sustain our sound. And you may find that when you encounter a chorale in any kind of music, normally we are gonna try to think of some kind of rhythm just to fill the time more evenly throughout all that space. In this case, we're just doing sextuplets for now, just to keep the hands moving and to continue to work on this double vertical skill in a roll situation. All right, we are going to be shifting into our G minor chord here with the G and B flat, D, G. So we do have to think about how to get into this spot more comfortably. So I actually like to move my right hand off of the center for just a little bit, right? So instead of playing both mallets in the center while my left hand is on the edge of the B flat and the middle of the G, you can see how close my hands are together here. And this is kind of uncomfortable to move this quickly in a roll, right? It doesn't feel great. So instead, I like to have my hands a little bit more mirrored, right? So that they're looking and facing the same direction. So again, my G minor chord here with my right hand, my mallet 3 is below the resonator, and my mallet 4 is above the resonator, right? And as long as we're kind of the same distance away from the center of the bar, you will get a similar sound in each mallet. So the sound quality will still be good in this position, right? So it'll look something like this, right? As opposed to this, right? Now, this doesn't feel good. This feels much more relaxed, and it gives my left wrist less of a turn here if I'm playing it with my right hand in the center of the bars, right? All right, so take a listen to line number 2, and as I shift, notice how I get in and out of that second chord, okay? Here's line number 2. And then we also have one more shift down here, although this one is a little easier to navigate with our B flat and E, right? I'm still keeping my left hand mostly in the center here as I hit the edge of the B flat in the center of the E. It's not nearly as close of a position as our chord here so we can still stay in the center with these slightly wider notes. Okay, so again, it's like a roll, it's like a chorale. We're just moving our 6 tuplets through this chord progression, keeping it nice and light while thinking of when and where you need to shift and move into the positions you need to be in. Lines 3 and 4, we have more interval changes and one hand at a time, right? So in line 3, we're working on our thirds and octaves, and then fourths into octaves as we maintain this kind of triplet feel. Okay, something to think about is as we're playing these triplets, right, try to think of the half note pulse instead of the quarter note pulse, right? So thinking of, right, as our pulse instead of, like, we don't need to necessarily feel every left hand downbeat because we're really thinking about only the right. The left hand, once we find that interval, we're just gonna let it be there, let it sit, let it settle, while we're really focused on changing our intervals at the correct speed and at the right rhythm, all right? So here's line number 3. Okay, so with line number 3, there's quite a few things to think about as you are navigating the interval changes and the shifts. Obviously, the left hand just kind of stays here, right? So a good way to start this particular line is actually just to touch the notes, right? And kind of leave your left hand kind of stationary as you play only your right. So we'll do something like this. We'll just leave it here and we'll go. And then you'll move it. Right, as you can see, right, as you're in this position with the F and B flat, we're having to angle our torso just a little bit when we're staying on the first chord, right? But then we need to open up to the octave and move kind of how you're facing with your body to get to this particular interval here while you leave your left hand in this position. So it's gonna be a little uncomfortable. So isolating the hands, at first will allow you to be more successful when you put the hands together, okay? And as always, when we're playing all these double verticals, still think about that wrist, right? I know we're thinking really about the interval changes and the body shifts and whatever, and this can start to happen with our forearm and elbow, but remember, it's always a double vertical stroke, which is gonna come from the wrist, not any other joint in our body, okay? Same thing with line number 4 here. Now our left hand is responsible for the interval changes, so I would also start by keeping the right hand just stationary, right, and just working on the left hand motion of the interval changes and the shift over to the F and B flat. Although when we're on the G and D here in the left hand, it's going to be a little bit easier to find that octave because we don't have to worry about going from this kind of position into the octave. All right, so here's line number 4. Okay, so you see, just leaving my my right hand where it is, right, and just navigating that shift will be a lot easier. When we get to lines number 5 and 6, okay, we're working on our single independence. And this one moves pretty quickly with these 6 tuplets, all right? So definitely start this one at a much slower tempo so that we're not just throwing 6 tuplets, right? And then having it all be messy and uneven and unbalanced, okay? So definitely start slower. And also notice that there is an accent on the downbeats, okay? So in addition to starting slower, isolate the hands first, right? And of course, the right hand is a little bit more active in line number 5 than the left. So I would start with the right hand. Okay? And the accent doesn't need to be much heavier than the surrounding notes. We don't really need to slam it, because that's only going to slow you down as you increase the speed. But it's just a little bit of a weight, and we can use our arm a little bit for that stroke. right? To kind of give it a more easy accent as opposed to trying to like add more tension or pressure or just to hit the keyboard harder, right? That's always not the best idea when we're adding accents, right? Because it will change how everything else feels as well. And adding tension is usually never the answer. Okay, so we're just gonna add a little bit of weight with our arm for that stroke here. And then as you add in the left hand, right, we want these inside mallets to be pretty balanced, okay? So thinking about how that sounds with our mallets together. Okay, something else that would help when we're starting this, before you decide to put the hands together, I would actually do them in double stops, all right? Just so we can see and feel the motion of all the notes moving at the same time. And that way also you can more easily hear if those inside mallets are balanced or not, because you can more easily hear a double stop being balanced versus alternating notes being balanced. Okay, and the same thing of course applies when we go further through the exercise and we're using our mallet 1, kind of isolating it as a double stop. And of course, don't forget to go for the edge of this B flat and a slight shift of our body so that we're facing the correct direction here. And it's okay when you're not using mallet 2 and you're only using mallet 1 for this one to just kind of be wherever it needs to be. Don't feel the need to keep it out, right, like this, because that's an uncomfortable position for your elbow and for your wrist, right? Just kind of be relaxed and allow the hand to kind of match in terms of their position. We're just not using this mallet right now. We're using mallet 1, right? And we're just hitting one note here, okay? As we're going on to line number 6, same idea, we're just flipping the script here. Now the left hand is doing all these motions, right? So thinking about using a little bit of arm and weight to achieve the accent. And I would take the same steps. So one hand at a time first, and then play it as double stops. Before you decide to move the mallets together. Right, and as you get through the next 2 measures here, we're switching over to mallet 4, of course. When we get to this E and B flat in the left hand and the B flat in the right, I would definitely go for the center of the bar, right? So it'll look something like this. Right, while the left hand mallet 2 stays on the edge. Lines 7, 8 are introducing triplets into our laterals. So it's the same lateral motion we've had earlier, but now we're just moving it in a triplet pattern, okay? And we're also gonna be quickly going from outside laterals into our inside laterals from measure to measure, all right? So this is where the lateral recovery and the correct motions are very important, right? So our points of contact here as we lift, right? If the lift does not happen, then you are not setting yourself up correctly for the next lateral, and you'll find that it is going to feel really awkward to try to play the opposite lateral when the recovery doesn't happen, okay? So take a listen to line number 7. And this is where reinforcing that double vertical check in the previous levels becomes a really important skill, because it all comes from a double vertical height and setup, right? So each recovery of the lateral, right? If I were to take a picture of your mallets at that point in between each beat, it should look like you're about to play a double vertical, right? But if you find that your mallets are somehow ending up like this, for example, where you're like preparing for the previous lateral, or they're just not at the same height, then you're not going to be able to transition correctly into the opposite lateral. And you'll find that it'll just feel tense, and it's not going to sound even or good, and the rhythms and sound will be very frustrating to deal with. Okay, so the recovery of the lateral is super important here. And of course, line number 8, same thing, but now it's the left hand playing the lateral. So again, make sure that you were making the same points of contact and doing the same recovery, okay? So line number 9. So this is where we're kind of in between strokes here with the tempo that the exercise is written at, right? So these eighth notes are a little too slow to really consider to be double laterals, but it's kind of like a double lateral motion, but depending on the tempo, it could be also a single alternating stroke, right? Okay, and then as you get into these triplets, we're approaching a triple lateral technique with these strokes going up and down, right? But because the tempo isn't quite fast enough, we're not really making 3 motions in one stroke. It's gonna feel like 3 separate things, okay? So prioritize the rhythm always, okay? So as you play these triplets, just make sure that you're moving the mallets in the correct rhythm, and the lateral motion should feel correct. Okay, so here's line number 9. Okay, when we get to line number 10, this is where we're really playing a quick lateral motion here, descending and ascending, with some mini checks in between these motions, okay? The checks do not line up exactly with the laterals because the triplets don't fall on the same beat, but as long as you think about keeping your hands relaxed and moving your mallets quickly through that motion and landing on the upbeat with the end of the lateral, it'll feel just fine. So here's the first measure of line 10. Right? And of course, the recovery is going to be very important here because in the next measure, we do the opposite lateral, but then we quickly go from descending laterals into the ascending laterals with no rest in between. There's no check or eighth notes or anything to help you set up for that. So here's all of line 10, okay? Right? So going from that quick 4, 3, 2, 1 into a 1, 2, 3, 4, if your recovery is not correct, where the 1, 2, 3, 4 has no chance of happening, right? So that quick rebound, right? So in between those 2 motions, in addition to the shift as well, you're gonna have to make sure that you're ready for a double vertical stroke with all 4 mallets up so that you can execute that ascending lateral. As you work your way through this level, and if you approach level 20 successfully, you're probably already playing some decent level literature as a solo, or maybe in percussion ensemble, or maybe even some band music that has some 4 mallet material. But you'll find that you won't see every single technique in every single piece of music, right? So supplementing with these exercises will help just round out the development of your skills. Playing music is great, it works on other things besides technique, but to continue to improve our fundamentals so that you can play even more challenging music, using these exercises to supplement will just improve everything quicker so that you can continue to play cooler and more interesting, more exciting pieces of music. If you made it to the end of level 20, congratulations, and thank you for watching through all the levels. I hope this was informative and helpful in your development of 4 mallet technique. And speaking of technique, you know, something to think about is the technique is not the goal, right? We want to develop good technique and, you know, continue to perfect it so that we can achieve and play harder musical literature, right? So that you can continue to expose yourself and unlock different solos where if your technique wasn't good enough before, after working through these levels, hopefully they are, so that we can apply the information we learned, not just listen to me play level 20 and that's about it, right? Because that's not necessarily musical in and of itself, right? But level 20 will introduce and allow you to play the solos that you maybe you saw someone on YouTube playing a really, really hard solo and you're like, man, I really want to play that. I don't even know where to start. Well, improving your technique will open the door to these harder solos. And while these levels are very informative, nothing really beats having a private lesson teacher or someone that you can go to for immediate feedback, where they can look at your hands, listen to you play, and help more specifically with the issues that you are having. So I would highly encourage, if you can, if you have the resources available and there are teachers in your area, to seek out a private lesson teacher so that they can help you with the issues that you are facing as an individual. Now, if you're living in an area that maybe doesn't have a lesson teacher immediately available, like there should hopefully be some high school around or a college around that has percussionists that maybe they could help you out. Or online lessons are also an option, where maybe you record a video and you just send it to someone that you know is a teacher in some other part of the country or state or wherever, and they can give you feedback to help you with the problems that you are currently facing. Because again, while watching the video and learning from me is a great thing, I can't help you individually because I don't know what you're facing. I don't know I don't know what your hands look like. I don't know what your tendencies are. I can't hear your sound necessarily, right? So finding someone that can do that for you is another great resource in addition to watching these videos. So once again, thank you for watching. I hope all of these videos have been helpful and informative. And if you need some further assistance with some 4-mallet technique, don't hesitate to reach out on my Instagram handle. Is down here below. And I'm always happy to give advice or feedback or to watch videos. And good luck with everything 4-mallet related and everything else in your percussion journey.